Hey friends, happy Monday! We're here to read chapter 33 of our book. So here we go. Jack, someone whispered. Jack groaned but didn't open his eyes. The pain in the back of his head pounded away, threatening to magnify dramatically if he so much as cracked his eyelids. And what if he did open his eyes, and he was still in a meadow? No, that had been a dream. But where had the dream actually started? Had he dreamed the entire beanstalk mess? Maybe he could just go back to sleep and let this whole nightmare end on its own. Jack, the voice whispered again, louder this time. Wake up! I knew you were going to say that, Jack grunted, then cracked his eyes open. Instantly, he closed them. Some kind of floating globe of light was shining right in his face, blinding him. More cautiously this time, he tilted his head to the side and opened his eyes again. Not only was there a light, but bars, too. Big metal bars. They'd been thrown in jail by the goblins, as promised. At least the monsters were reliable. May? Jack asked, reluctantly pushing himself to a sitting position. He glanced around his cell and quickly spotted her staring at him from the next cell over, just to the left of the floating will-o'-the-wisp globe that eerily lit the cells. About time you woke up, she said indignantly. I've been sitting here for hours. Did they hit you too? Jack asked, lightly rubbing the back of his head, then resolving not to do that any more when new pain shot through his temples. Well, no, May said. They didn't touch me. Jack nodded. That was something. I'm still annoyed, though, May said, standing up with her hands on her hips. I mean, what kind of guards don't take you to the person in charge? Yeah, evil monsters not listening to you. Who could have predicted that? Jack asked, taking a quick look around his jail cell. Greenish hay filled one corner, probably for sleeping on. Nice of his jailers to throw him onto the hard ground in the middle of the room instead of onto the hay. An old wooden bucket sat in the opposite corner, the one nearest a barred window at the rear of the cell. Great, he said, shaking his head. How do we manage to hit the worst possible outcome in every situation? We'll just talk our way out, May said, though she didn't sound too convinced. Jack raised an eyebrow. Talk to who? The guard, a judge, malevolent, someone. They can't just leave us here. Oh, really? Jack said, then nodded toward the cell on his right. May strained to see what he meant, then gasped. Is that a skeleton? She said, cringing. Yup, Jack said. He probably should have tried talking his way out. Don't make me come over there, May said, banging on the bars between them. Then she gasped suddenly, jumping backward. Jack, I saw something moving. Don't worry, Jack said, following her gaze. It's just rats. Where's Philip? No clue, May said. I haven't seen anyone but you. Well, and now that guy, and the rats. Jack nodded and stood up, bracing himself against the walls. The room chose that moment to sway and spin, apparently just to spite him. He shook off the dizziness and set to work. What are you doing? May asked Jack as he bent over and stared into each corner of the cell. There's always one of these places just watching for someone interesting, he said. They can't resist checking out the new people. You just have to find... Aha! He reached into the corner with the bucket and grabbed a hold of what looked to be a long white thread. As he yanked on it, the thread pulled up a tassel which topped a funny little red hat, which in turn sat on top of an imp's tiny pointed head. Jack dragged the creature out of its hiding place and held it in midair. Let me go, the imp screamed, desperately clutching its red hat with little, white-knuckled fists as it kicked at Jack with all its strength. The imp's furious face stretched up as tightly as it could, considering its beard was tucked into its bright blue pants, a color that happened to go nicely with its shockingly goldenrod tunic. Jack held the imp out at arm's length, both to keep the creature from biting him and to avoid the smell. Maybe the corner with the waste bucket wasn't the smartest place to live. Release me, the imp said, struggling even more viciously. No, Jack said simply. You're going to help us first. I'll let you go when you agree to free the princess there. Oh, a princess, the imp said, immediately stopping its struggle with a big grin. Put me down. Let me get a look at her. Jack smiled. I'll put you down, but your hat's mine, just in case you're thinking about running. He jerked his arm, ripping the hat off the imp's head and tossing the little creature to the floor. Before it even hit the ground, the imp started screaming obscenities, its face an unnaturally bright purple, but Jack just shrugged. I'm keeping your hat until you get her out of here, he said calmly. The imp stopped swearing. I'll help her out of here, all right. A smile slowly made its way over the imp's beady little face. Again, no, Jack said. You'll put her out there on the floor right outside our jail cells. You will not alert the guards or do anything else to put her in danger. Also, you will not turn her into a frog or shrink her the size of a mushroom. You will put her outside the cells without changing or hurting her in any way. Do we understand each other? The imp stamped his foot. You humans have become far too clever to be any fun. Then it smiled again. But what about you, fine sir? You said you would give me my hat back if I freed her, yet you'll still be stuck in this dank, dreary cell. What deal will you strike for your own freedom? No deal, Jack said, his eyes narrowing. She'll find a way to get me out. The imp managed to look indignant. You wound me, good sir. I could easily grant your freedom from this cell and ask nothing in return. That sounds good. We'll take that, May yelled from the other cell before Jack could stop her. Jack groaned all the way down to his feet. Oh, May, he said, shaking his head. Deal, the imp said, jumping forward to seize May's hand, which it pumped furiously up and down. And now I shall grant his freedom, yes, and for no price, however. The imp snapped its fingers, and suddenly Jack was hanging in midair outside the castle, a few feet from a barred window and hundreds of feet above the ocean below. Jack glanced around fearfully and swallowed hard. The rest of the castle was below him. He was hanging outside the very top of the tower in the tail of the dragon. Apparently, the lit window they'd seen from the ground had been the jail. Jack! May screamed from inside the tower. The imp's eyes burned with greed as they stared at the princess. Let's just say that if you want me to not release him at this point, milady, we'll have to make a second deal. May grabbed the imp by its white hair and smashed its head straight into the bars of her cell over and over. Get him back in here, she screamed. The imp howled in pain. Outside, Jack abruptly dropped a few feet. As Jack shouted in surprise, May dropped the imp, who instantly collected herself. That's a no-no, milady, the imp said, a cold gleam in its eyes. Wouldn't want me to lose concentration and drop our hero boy, now would we? What do you want? Jack yelled from outside. What's the deal? The imp jumped up to the windowsill. I'm a creature of few desires, good sir, it said. Why, I'd be perfectly satisfied with, say, both your arms. Jack shook his head in disgust. The imp shrugged, and Jack dropped a few feet more, making him yell out again despite himself. This really wasn't going well at all. What else? Jack said, trying to keep his voice calm but failing miserably. The imp thought about it for a second. You could hand over the pretty set of teeth, it said, or an ear and an eye. Its eyes lit up all of a sudden. Ooh, I'll take every other word from the princess's tongue. That would serve me quite well. One can never have too many words, after all. Jack shook his head again and this time dropped out of sight of the window, coming to a stop about halfway down the dragon's tail. May screamed his name, but he waited to respond until he could hear her over the sound of his heartbeat. I'm okay, he yelled finally. You know, relatively. I'm actually a little scared for some reason. I figured that out, May yelled in reply as the imp floated Jack back up to the tower's window. Clearly the imp had them, but maybe there was still a way out. Jack quickly ran through the stories he'd heard. What about, no, they didn't have a chicken. Or wait, what about a contest, Jack yelled. I know better than to fall for that, the imp said disgustedly. A cousin of mine taught a girl to spin straw into gold once, if she would give up her firstborn child. The girl agreed at first, then reneged on the deal, typical human. Being the kind-hearted imp my cousin was, he agreed to one of your foolish contests. If she could but guess his name, he'd let her keep her gold and her child. The girl cheated, of course, as you people always do, and won. The imp's nostril flared, and it continued. Then the bitter little witch and her husband, the prince, rename every city in their miserable little kingdom by my cousin's name. He's a laughingstock to this day. He even has to exile himself to regain his dignity. May looked from Jack to the imp and back, and her eyes went wide. Mr. Little Imp Man, sir, she said, can I offer something? May don't, Jack yelled, but the imp just waved its hands and Jack dropped halfway down the tower again. Even though he couldn't see her, he could still hear the shake of May's voice. Okay, first of all, she screamed, you're going to have to stop dropping him like that. The imp shrugged and Jack reappeared outside the window. Thank you, May said, sighing in relief. Now I have something to offer you if you'll bring him back in. Is it your skull? The imp said, licking his lips. The skull of a princess is a delicacy, you know. May stared at the thing in shock for a moment, then shook her head. No, she said. I have something much more valuable. Something I use each and every day. Something more important to me than my very life. The gleam in the imp's eye almost lit up the room. Jack started to say something to stop the princess, but she threw him a quick look that told him to stay out of it. He slowly shut his mouth, hoping she knew what she was doing. I'll give you, May said, then paused and leaned in close to the imp, who obediently followed suit. I'll give you my sarcasm, she whispered. The imp's smile slowly faded, and it pulled back away from her. Your sarcasm? Yes, May said, wiping a fake tear from her eye. I don't know if I can live without it. I'll just have to do my best. But princesses don't use sarcasm, the imp protested. Oh yeah, they never do, May said. Wow, the imp said, very impressed. That's pretty good. Who'd have thought a girl like me would know anything about sarcasm, May continued, snorting a bit. "You are incredible," the imp said. It was jumping up and down. "Such a natural." "It must be because I'm having so much fun right now," May said, rolling her eyes. "You've got a deal," the imp screamed delightedly. It snapped his fingers and Jack instantly appeared back in the cell. The imp snapped again and a bluish light appeared over May's head. The light shone briefly, changing from blue to green, then disappeared. A second light, this one green, appeared over the imp's hatless skull, then turned blue and also faded away. Jack gritted his teeth and leapt for the imp, but the creature made as if to snap his fingers again, and Jack stopped short. "You little monster," Jack growled, more furious than he'd ever been. "If you've taken anything from her, I swear I will hurt you and take it out on your empty skull, and I won't be using magic." "Ooh," the imp said, shivering. "I'm so scared." Then it laughed. "Your sarcasm is amazing, Princess. You had a master-level talent." May started to say something, then paused, looking confused. "Yeah," she stammered. I used it a lot." She glanced at Jack, her eyes wide. "I didn't think it was something he could actually take." "You didn't know?" the imp said, grinning evilly. "Someone as worldly as you? I'm so surprised." "Now!" It snapped its fingers. May disappeared, instantly reappearing on the other side of the cell. "My hat?" Now that the imp had fulfilled its part of the deal, it didn't need Jack's cooperation. It snapped its fingers and its hat reappeared on its head, leaving Jack holding nothing. "Let him out too," May yelled from the other side of the bars. "That was never the deal, genius," the imp said, stroking his hat lovingly. "I just said that I'd bring him in, and I did. He's stuck here, I'm afraid. I'm really surprised you didn't figure that one out sooner, though, considering that huge brain you've got going for you." May glared at the imp, then suddenly smiled her half-smile. "If you leave him in there," she said softly, "I'll tell everyone your name." "Ha!" the imp shouted. "You don't know it." It went back to stroking its hat, but Jack noticed that it didn't seem quite as sure of itself. "Oh yeah," May said. "Let's just say I've heard of your cousin. And family names are family names, aren't they, Mr. Stillskin?" The imp started to respond, then turned a very pale shade of white. "How? Where? How did?" it stammered, then abruptly started howling and stomping its feet. It opened its mouth to say something else, then glared at the princess, who glared back defiantly. Finally, the imp dropped its head and sighed. It snapped its fingers, and Jack appeared outside the bars, right at May's side. "That's what I thought," May said, turning up her nose at the dejected, sarcastic imp. "You don't mess with a princess from Punk, little man," she said. "Remember that next time." The imp pushed itself up against the bars. "Oh, I'll remember you, princess," it said, its smile showing all 400 of its teeth. "You can count on that." And then with an unsettling wink, the imp disappeared. Well, they got out of the jail, so we'll have to see now how they get to Malevolent and get out of that mess. See you tomorrow.